Earlier, corporates used to take a long-term decisions, and they plan accordingly, and they build the resources for the decision what they make. And of course, yes, as an educational institute, we also do have a long-term decisions, and we understand that this is the way how we wanted to grow, and these are the courses what we wanted to do, and we create our own assets based on that. But of late, we keep seeing that there are a lot of instant reactions by the corporate, primarily because for the market momentum and market trends and market changes. This has resulted into a lot of cost for a educational institute. Let me explain you how it has created. Then you can put it forth how this can be managed. Earlier, when the recruiters come and hire, the students who go and join the firms used to dedicate their career with certain firms for a given number of years, and they grow there over a period of time, and they also understand that this is the level of contribution what they have to make. And corporates also do come and check the level of loyalty what the student brings, and the corporate also checks like is the student will be able to give a long term of his career with them and so on. But of late, what is happening? These corporates come and they hire by looking at if the employee will be able to stay with them for long term. And whoever comes and makes a pitch about the company before hiring, they try to give this clear path of how he will grow in the corporate over a period of time if he sticks on to the firm. And compensation are also decided like this. There is a joining bonus, then there is a 2-year retention bonus, 3-year retention bonus, then there is a ESOP, and all this compensation design communicates as if we need you in long term, right? And then they hire and go, and in 3 or 6 months time, they lay him off. And but to be honest, there was one big technology giant who hired good number of students, and they laid off all the students in 6 months time. And this is not the case with just one firm, and it is the case with few industry, right? And they lay off just like that, primarily because they are reacting to the instant market requirements. I mean, this has created a huge social cost, right? And these kids who pass out of MBA colleges and even engineering colleges for that sake, they are clueless. What should I do now, right? So where are we heading towards, and what is the plan of corporates, and is it that these type of market reactions are something which is uncontrollable, or how it has to be handled? This is the discussion. Please. Yeah, please.
Very instant thoughts.
Yeah, please.
Is it the strategy versus the market reaction? And the example that you gave of students being hired and then laid off, I don't think that's a reaction to market changes. I think that's a reaction to potential stock price implications and potential stock price drop. Potential, yeah, it's not happened yet, but the risk of that happening. So some change happens in the market, which is going to lead to a reduction of revenue or margins. You compensate that by cutting costs. That's what this organization has done. Not all companies do that. We as a company don't do those kind of short-term things. Yeah. But different companies behave differently. Different managements and leaderships behave differently. So I think that's one part of it. And this is where I think organizations need to figure out what they stand for. Do they only stand for the stock price and the street, or do they really stand for something beyond that? That's each organization has to figure out for itself. Now, coming back to the core question of strategy and market, these two can't be dealing, because when you're developing a strategy, so very simplistically, strategy has 5 components. What's your ambition? Where do you want to play? And that has multiple aspects to it. How do you want to win? What's your differentiation? What kind of core capabilities do you want to build? How are you going to manage all this? So with a where to play part has the market inside it. So when you're building your strategy itself, a big component of that is the market. And the market is never static. Some markets are more dynamic than others, but every market is dynamic. The time ranges can be different. So your strategy encompasses the market, and it should provide for fluctuations in the market, changes in the nature of the market, changes in customer preferences, B2B, B2C, B2G, it will all differ. But your strategy is going to provide for all this and have the flexibility to adapt to changes. So I'm not sure these are dealing. I think the strategy involves the market, and as market evolves, the strategy evolves as well. Again, no strategy is static. You may build a 5-year strategy or 10-year strategy, whatever you want. but you got to have a strategy refresh on a certain periodic basis. Depending on which sector, it could be 6 months, it could be 1 year, it could be 2 years.
Just one point. Then you can add. Is it layoff part of a strategy?
See, maybe not this layoff.
Because
Layoffs can be a part of that.
because some of the firms they are so consistent with this, it looks like it is part of their strategy.
Okay, so one pertinent
Sorry, if I can just respond to that.
Uh,
I used to work for an American company before this, where layoffs were not a part of the strategy, but the company's openness to laying off people was very high. And I remember every 4 quarters, there used to be a quarter where the anticipation was the earnings will decline. Let's lay off people in advance, and we would rehire them back in 6 months, which made no sense. But it was done. And today I work for a group, the Godrej group, where we will not lay off whether business is up or down. We will think 5 years. Because the talent that you have today, you've trained them, you invested in them. There's a morale, there's an engagement. You don't treat people like you treat machines on and off. So I think that's why I said, what's the organization philosophy? What's the promoter or shareholder philosophy? Makes a difference.
one pertinent question that I would ask, even the placement season going great, placement season and everything, that is also a reaction to markets, right?
Correct.
When you get a right, so that time you don't complain and say, okay, why the companies are really placing everyone and every student is getting 2 offers and everything else. So that is also a market reaction. So in that sense, it is a thing that goes on, and not that I am supporter of laying off or anything, but trying to just justify how sometimes markets, companies react according to the markets. And I take an example of Jana, and it is not about laying off people or the example is not of that. But what I want to really talk about at its the high time, it was having 12,000 crore book and all that, and largest microfinance institution when I was part of it, and then it became suddenly 6,000 crore book. Now, how does the company manage that 6,000, 7,000 crore book from 12,000 crore? And suddenly you can say it's not only about revenue dropping. The costs are much more sticky, right? Revenues are not that kind of sticky. So staff cost is one cost that sometimes companies think of, but I think most of the companies, and I don't talk about the American company that you talked about, but most of the companies, when they do plan of layoff, they try to compensate in some other way. They are not fighting they're not fighting the short-term volatility. They are probably looking for some long-term plan, maybe 2 years, 3 years, and that is why sometimes these reactions come in.
The hierarchy of reaction, okay, that a company can take towards cost pressure, employee cost probably falls towards the end, the last, and within employee cost, a layoff is probably the most drastic, right? If you really have to cut down on cost, you have many other things you end up doing even before you think of layoff, right? So you can, I think, for example, you can over a period of time rationalize pay. You can next year reduce increments. Okay, you can stop hiring for the next year. A lot of things that can be done before even a company thinks of layoff. Okay. Now, what that means is that if we have to give a benefit of doubt to that company, right? It's almost like it's reached a stage, as Vishal said, it's become too difficult to sustain, right? Only then that has become a action or drastic action that has been taken. Now, when that happens, sometimes you can reflect back and say that was I really looking at a long term? Was I looking at a short term? Is it a reaction, etc., etc.? Those can be analyzed. Eventually, the decision of absorbing that cost that you're not able to absorb depends on what is the top-down philosophy of the company. Saying that as a company, do I have a philosophy of laying off? Or do I want to try other things before thinking about it? Most companies will think about all the other things before thinking about it. But as I think I agree with what everybody is saying, there are market-linked forces that may force companies. But you want it to be the last decision or the last straw, proverbial. Before
some of companies don't have. That is what he was saying. So some companies may have that as a every year think about rationalization. Yeah. Obviously, that not that something that I would endorse, but yeah, some companies do, and that is why this reaction.
Let me start with a very much lighter note to say that last in first out, make sense? Would you rather, if you had to do this, would you send out the most experienced people who worked in the trenches for 20 years versus the guys who are still figuring out what they're doing in the organization?
But it's usually the FIFO that
Right.
people follow.
Right. So, but yeah, most recent is what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
But if you just go back to the point that you made, look, the dynamics of this have changed. You've created, I wouldn't call it a commodity, but you've created a good that is in limited supply. Companies, everything that you do about the placement exercise is a gladiator fight for the best and the brightest, and you are creating that and you're stimulating that, if not directly your placement committees, your reps. Sir, आप ऑफर दे दो वरना मतलब चला जाएगा. 5 offers made, by the time you say yes, 4 are gone, and now the next 4 come up to you and you can't help feeling. I was at some of the institutes the last year, and I saw this up close and personal. So there is this element of trophy buying, for want of a better word, that is playing out. Now, obviously, what you say is right, but that is true of the general pace of business. And I'd like to bring up that point you made because I'm in the business technology area. So what you said, today we have an overdose of numbers. If you really look at what I'm able to see when it comes to my business now, if you were to picture me as an airline pilot, I used to see 200 dials. Now I'm seeing 2000 dials. Why? Partly because I can. I've enabled the ability to see those dials. Now, should you react to the 1800 dials that you didn't have? It's a personal choice, or rather an organizational choice or a cultural choice or whatever, which says, am I going to respond to that? Yes or no? And that is your management choice that you have. Now, because you have that data, it makes it possible for you to respond in near real time. I mean, some of us have worked before email was as widespread. Some of us have worked before mobiles were as widespread. The general pace of business has picked up to the point that what used to happen in 5 years happens in a year, and we're generally very proud and happy to say that. I don't see why the same thing doesn't apply to all the negative aspects of decision making, of overreach. Now you enabled overreach on steroids because your ability to react is also automated. Press a button and 15 guys are out of the company. Earlier it used to be a process. You sit around a room, you discuss the pros and cons, you try and figure that out. Now it's just, okay, we've taken a decision and somebody 6 rungs down in HR is going out and making the letters. So I think, we shouldn't really be surprised or as surprised as we sound about it, because it's a natural consequence of picking up the pace of business.
I think it's not a culture also because, as much as the companies, if you would look at, who are very open to firing, they are also very open to hiring very quickly. So they will hire mindlessly and then they will immediately not mind laying off. So
You said that when they hire more, you are happy. When they fire, you are unhappy.
that's the point, that the companies who are mindlessly doing it's all about cultural driven. The way I think these companies forget, and that's my personal take, is that what they forget is that this kind of culture, while it will encourage people for a short term joining you, it will never encourage a long term thinking of the people who are staying, who wants to stick with you for longer years, because they don't know what your commitment is. So neither would I make that commitment to you as an employee, right? And as a purely an individual, not as a leader, if I talk about, I will never join a company. I will always look at the company that, look at the people, look at the leaders, since how long they have been with the company. That defines that what the company's values are and the culture is.